Hello and welcome to The Album Man, and today we are going to be at long last completing the Beatles discography. I know it's been a long time, but finally I began this in 2013 and now in 2017 I'm actually going to finish it. So of course we're going to talk about Let It Be. So while Abbey Road was released first, before Let It Be in 1969, whereas Let It Be was released in 1970, Let It Be was the proper successor chronologically to the White Album. And after the very tumultuous, stressful sessions that accompanied the White Album, or the acrimony and arguments and the Lennon-McCartney rift that began, McCartney really wanted to just get back to basics, getting away from the layered, intricate arrangements that had really dominated the Beatles post-Revolver, and instead just making the Fab Four fab again, going back to that basic sound of the early Beatles album, which is shown in one of the concepts for the cover art of Let It Be, which was going to be all of the Beatles as they looked in 1969 at the same place where the cover of their first album, Please Please Me, was taken. But this concept didn't really work out. There were a number of things going against this album from the beginning. First of all, you had John Lennon's heroin addiction and the influence of Yoko becoming far more prevalent, so John began to sort of step away and lose interest in the band, with McCartney becoming the de facto leader of the group and becoming quite controlling in the creative aspect of things, which led George to then become discontented as he was feeling rather underappreciated. I mean, George even walked out and actually quit at one point during the Let It Be sessions, but he was later coaxed back into it a couple of days later, as long as the band agreed to record at the basement of Apple Corp instead of the Twickenham Sound Studios, and also drop the plans of public performance. And during these sessions, the band played hundreds and hundreds of songs, but they were just that bit out of practice as an ensemble, and as a result, there were great arguments that ensued. While the White Album was really the beginning of the end, then Let It Be was the peak of that, with Abbey Road as, I guess, the last hurrah before the fall. And as a result of this, in Let It Be we find a more disjointed record than the cohesion of Abbey Road. And while Let It Be does have some great and memorable tunes, it is just bogged down by filler and some utter fluff. I mean, while Lennon's comments that it was the shittiest load of badly recorded shit with a lousy feeling to it is perhaps an overstatement. But after the remixes and re-edits, and then Phil Spencer being brought in and adding an orchestra and choir to 3 of the tracks, and which McCartney just was deeply, deeply unhappy with the way that Phil Spector, using his trademark wall of sound approach, filled out the sound of some of the sparser tracks on the album, which resulted even in McCartney being bitter about it for a long time, and in 2003 releasing Let It Be Naked, which stripped away Phil Spector's orchestral arrangements. So, as we have for the previous Beatle albums, let's go track by track into this album. The disc opens with Two of Us, and this is supposed to be a love song from Paul to his then soon-to-be wife, Linda. And opening the record, it certainly does demonstrate that kind of back-to-basics mentality that they were going for with the Get Back sessions. And this song is definitely in the vein of those, I'd say, classic Beatles love songs, the ones that pervade the earlier part of their career, Love Me Do, P.S. I Love You, etc., etc., but certainly with a different, maybe maturer feel to it. It's a lively acoustic track, and I definitely get a bit of a country tinge from it myself, sung in a duet with John and Paul, and really it feels, I would say, more like a summation of John and Paul's relationship than really Paul and Linda's, about the looking back on their time together type thing. And it is a rare moment on the album where one can almost suspend their disbelief and believed for a second that the band was somewhat unified. Still, while I enjoy aspects of the song, and it is sung in that with that trademark sort of Paul warmth, and it is a pleasant, I guess, inoffensive ballad with a decent hook. It really doesn't do anything out of the ordinary, nothing at all unexpected, and I do find it a bit of a weak opener. It's not really the type of song that hooks you in that much to the album. The second track, Dig a Pony, was recorded from the infamous rooftop gig above Apple Corp, with an assistant even holding up the lyrics for Lennon to sing along to, because the Beatles were a bit out of practice on the live side of things. The lyrics, they were characterized by John as being kind of Dylan-like. They have this, but I don't know, but in a more nonsensical kind of way. None of them really make sense. And it's one of Lennon's few genuine contributions to the album, and in my opinion, one of the better tracks on the record. I mean, call that Lennon bias if you want, but this has a cool bluesy groove to it in the rhythm and some really soulful guitar playing from George, building to a climactic chorus. I mean, George's solo, despite his huge reluctance to play any form of live performance, he really didn't like gigging that much with the Beatles. It's a beautiful, beautiful contribution, adding some much needed texture and flair to the song. And then with Across the Universe, we have another Lennon composition, and this is one of my very favourites from the album. And I know some see this as kind of a self-indulgent Lennon song, but to me this is just a gorgeous cosmic ballad with psychedelic and Indian overtones to it, a meditative flair. You got some subtle wah-wah in the background, and it just has, again, with this strange ethereal effect in Lennon's voice. It's got an intoxicating, almost dream-like vibe to it, especially with the lyrical content. And I really think that Phil Spector did a wonderful job with the orchestration to this song, adding depth and richness to it. But then we get to I, Me, Mine, which was actually the last recorded song by the Beatles up until the 90s, Free as a Bird sessions with Jeff Lynne. But it was, even though John had actually left by the time I, Me, Mine was recorded, it still counts. And the pronouns in the title are actually ways of referring to the ego in a Hindu context. And I guess, surprisingly enough, when you've got a theme like ego, it's going to be meditating on the clashes of ego afflicting and destroying the band. With angry, harsh-sounding guitars, you can really hear, I would say, the frustration and desperation in the way George sings this, just how sick he is with the Beatles, underappreciating him and treating him more as a session guitarist than a fully fledged band member, and more importantly, than a songwriter. I mean, he talked in later interviews about how annoyed he was spending, as he says, lots of time on the pop inanity of Maxwell's Silver Hammer, yet the Beatles moaned when they had to learn his songs. This is a great farewell from George to the Beatles, a solid tune, and it's, I guess, a bit unfortunate the song was artificially inflated by Spector, repeating the first verse and the chorus towards the end, but on Anthology 3 you can find the unextended version, and I don't think there's anything lost with the unextended version, honestly. Oh, but then we get Dig It. This is 50 seconds of absolute filler, absolute tosh. It's boring, it's pointless. I have no clue why it made it onto the album. It's something that, would be a, I don't know, maybe fun curiosity to add on the anthologies. As an actual album track, it's just not even worth talking about. Of course, then we have Let It Be, the title track and classic. What is there really to say about this? I'm not sure. It's just, like Yesterday, it's one of those beautiful Paul ballads, and funny enough, it also came to him in a dream, just like Yesterday. And yeah, sure, it is overplayed to death, but it's still stunning. It really is. It's Paul in his very best of just crafting a moving, beautiful ballad with a chorus to die for. Billy Preston's organ is a lovely addition, and what I think really makes it, and this is an addition from Phil Spector, is he used a different take of the guitar solo from George Harrison, and it's this hard-hitting, distorted one that just gives it this lovely, fuzzy kick, turning it from, I guess, a potentially cheesy tune into a classic. And I do love the orchestration as well, and I honestly do prefer the orchestrated version of Let It Be to the naked version. Aside from one track, which we will get to a bit later, I think it works very well, and here it just brings the choral crescendo to different heights. And yeah, this may sound a cliche statement, but it just is the best song on the album. It just is. There's really no question about it. It comes together so well, and it is the epitome of what Let It Be has to offer. Oh, and if 50 seconds of Dig It wasn't bad enough, we have Maggie Mae, which is a 40-second version of a traditional Liverpool folk song, which was popular amongst the sailors in Liverpool, the great port. And the first time I heard it, I thought, oh, this is kind of funny hearing, them go into the heavy Scouse accents. That's always quite nice as a Liverpudlian myself. And they have some specific Liverpool references. But any other time, I just find it absolute pointless and wasted filler like Dig It. It adds nothing. But then getting on to side 2 of the album, we open with I've Got a Feeling, and this is the best all-out rock song on the record, and probably one of the only all-out rock songs on the record. And this is a weird combination of a poor song which she hadn't finished called I've Got a Feeling, which is a happy, upbeat, optimistic song, and then part of a Lennon song which he didn't finish called Everybody Had a Hard Year, which is a deliberately depressing song about a hard year that Lennon had. And it does make for an odd combo, but Paul's voice is just in fine, all-out rock form, with Harrison's guitar cutting through the mix like a fuzzy knife, and some brilliant dynamics. It's probably my third favourite on the album. It's just a great track all round. Though compared to maybe some of the harder songs on the White Album, it doesn't quite hold up, but regardless, it's really good. The one after 909 is kind of a strange one. This was written by Lennon as a teenager, and this was is a recording from the Rooftop gig again. And it was one of Lennon McCartney's first kind of shots at writing together. So as a result, it has that 50s rock and roll skiffily vibe to it. But overall, it's a pretty mediocre song. I don't think it fits with the feel of the album. I mean, it's a bit of kind of nostalgic fun to the old school, sounds of the Beatles when they were just a proper rock and roll band. I mean, George, again, I think George's guitar work is really nice on this album, and he adds probably the best guitar solo on the album. It's freaking killer. But it's kind of a fun, but a bit song. I've said this before and have got a little bit of hate for saying it as this discography has gone along, that I have grown just a little bit tired of Paul's formulaic ballads that he has peppered throughout the discography. And while Let It Be still blows me away with his command of melody and songcraft, the long and winding road, on the other hand, I find totally underwhelms me. And this is one of the ones I do actually prefer without Spector's orchestral arrangements, as here they are just far too cheesy. The orchestral arrangement makes it sound like, I don't know, Disney soundtrack or some overly emotional part of a Hollywood blockbuster. I just don't find it remarkable, honestly, either way, whether it's naked or not. But the version presented here on the original version that we're reviewing is just fluff at best. For You Blue is the only other George composition on the album, and it's a little 12-bar blues number which was inspired by George's time jamming with Bob Dylan and the band in Woodstock in 1968. And while the lap steel guitar, I believe played by Lennon, is kind of fun, but contrary to George's proclamation in the lyrics that Elmore James has got nothing on this, I'd have to disagree. This ain't Elmore James, it's pretty uninspired generic blues, and it's honestly quite boring. George had some really great material from this time. I mean, hell, look at the All Things That Must Pass album that came out, in 1970, which was just full of astonishing stuff. But this is not one of those songs. This is not at all. So Get Back is the last song we have, and this features a nasally, I don't know, Dylan-y Paul doing a kind of a country rocker. I guess it's like the type of voice that Dylan would end up doing for a Nashville Skyline, which I hate. And it's about the anti-immigrant sentiment of the time, and it's a song that I guess still holds up to this day in that regard. But I have mixed feelings on this one. I hate Paul's nasally voice. I don't know, there's just something about this style of singing, like Dylan does on Nashville Skyline, like Paul does here, that it just irks me. I don't know why, but I just really don't like it. It just bothers me. And maybe it won't bother other people, and that's cool. I'm not saying this is a bad song. It's just that part does irk me. But I really like the instrumental arrangement, the jam-like nature of the song, and it does feel like the Beatles coming together, getting back to their roots. I did find the ending to be a tad abrupt. So in conclusion, regarding Let It Be, as I said earlier, it is a mixed bag. It's an album with some great moments like Across the Universe, One More Feeling, and the title track, but it's littered with filler or weird excerpts like Dig It from the sessions, and it just doesn't overall feel cohesive as an album. Each track feels very disjointed and separated from the rest, with little to no flow between the songs. It just feels like a compilation album from a set of sessions, instead of the band really building an album in the same way they did with Sgt. Pepper or Revolver. There's enough decent tracks to consider it a good enough Beatles record, but I'll give it 6 out of 10, maybe 6.5 on a good day, but sadly it's just an underwhelming end to one of rock's greatest bands. So yes, finally, after 4 years, that concludes my Beatles discography review, so now I can be free as a bird and not talk about the Beatles for a bit, though I of course love them dearly. This has been the Album Man, the end of my Beatles discography at long last. Long live rock and roll.